"Ma'am, I'm going to need you to move to coach. This seat isn't for you." The words sliced through the first-class cabin of Skyward Airlines Flight 1847 like a blade. Victoria Ashford, the lead flight attendant, stood in the aisle with her arms crossed, her perfectly tailored uniform hugging her frame, her sharp blue eyes fixed on the woman in seat 3A. That woman was Naomi Fletcher. She sat calmly, her navy blazer draped over the seat back, her laptop open on the tray table. She didn't look up immediately. She finished typing her sentence first. What Victoria didn't know was that the woman she was trying to remove owned 40% of the airline. And in about 30 minutes, 3 careers would end right there in that cabin. But before we dive into this story, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop your city in the comments below. And if this moment stops you in your tracks, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Now let's rewind to how this all began. The morning started like any other at San Francisco International Airport. Terminal 3 buzzed with the controlled chaos of early departures. Travelers wheeled suitcases across polished floors. Children whined about long lines, and the smell of overpriced coffee mixed with jet fuel hung in the air. Gate 28 was packed. Skyward Airlines Flight 1847 to New York. JFK was boarding in 20 minutes, and the usual pre-boarding anxiety had passengers clustering around the departure desk like moths to a flame. Behind the podium stood Derek Morrison. He was 35 with sandy brown hair that was just starting to thin at the crown and the kind of efficient smile that looked genuine but never quite reached his eyes. He'd worked for Skyward for 8 years, long enough to know every trick passengers tried to pull to sneak into earlier boarding zones. Naomi Fletcher walked through the terminal with the easy confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. She was 38 with dark skin that glowed even under the harsh fluorescent lights. Natural hair pulled back into a low bun and warm brown eyes that missed nothing. Her outfit was deliberately casual, a white t-shirt under a navy blazer, dark jeans that fit perfectly, and white sneakers that had seen better days but were meticulously clean. She carried a worn leather tote bag over one shoulder, a MacBook visible inside. She looked like a successful professional traveling comfortably. She did not look like someone who owned part of the airline. That was intentional. Naomi joined the Zone 1 boarding line, pulling out her phone to display her mobile boarding pass. The QR code gleamed on the screen seat number clearly visible 3A. First-class window seat. Ahead of her, an elderly white couple boarded without issue. Behind her, a businessman in an expensive suit tapped his phone impatiently against his thigh. When Naomi reached the podium, Derek glanced at her phone, then at her face, then back at her phone. "Zone 1 is for first-class passengers only, ma'am. Can I see your confirmation number?" Naomi turned her phone toward him more fully. "Of course. Seat 3. A first class." Derek's eyes narrowed slightly. He picked up the scanner gun and aimed it at her phone, but he didn't pull the trigger immediately. Instead, he studied the screen. "This shows a last-minute purchase." He looked up at her, his tone shifting from professional to suspicious. "Did you book this yourself?" "Yes." "Corporate card?" "Yes, my company's card." Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He scanned the code. The machine beeped green. Boarding pass accepted. But instead of waving her through, he set down the scanner and leaned forward slightly. "We've had some system errors this morning. I'm just going to verify this manually." Behind Naomi, the businessman groaned. "Come on, man. Some of us have connections to make." Naomi didn't turn around. She kept her eyes on Derek, her expression neutral. "Is there a problem with my ticket?" "Just doing my job, ma'am." Derek typed something into his computer, his fingers moving slowly across the keyboard. After a moment that stretched too long, he looked back up at her. "You're all set. Go ahead." Naomi took her phone back. "Thank you, Derek." She said his name deliberately, glancing at his name tag, letting him know she'd remember it. She walked down the jet bridge, her footsteps echoing against the metal walls. The air smelled like recycled oxygen and industrial cleaner. Through the windows, she could see the massive jet sitting on the tarmac, its white body gleaming in the California sun. At the aircraft door, a young woman stood with a bright smile. She was 24, with warm brown skin, dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her name tag read Sophia Martinez. Welcome aboard. Sophia's enthusiasm seemed genuine. Can I get you something to drink before takeoff? Just water, please. Thank you, Sophia. Naomi stepped into the first-class cabin. It was everything you'd expect from a premium airline, leather seats and a soft cream-color mood lighting that bathed everything in a warm glow, enough legroom to actually stretch out. The cabin could hold 12 passengers in a 2-2 configuration. Most of the seats were already occupied. Seat 3A was a window seat on the left side of the aircraft. Naomi stowed her bag in the overhead compartment, settled into her seat, and pulled out her laptop. She had work to do. A presentation to review. A proposal to finalize. She was so focused on her screen that she almost didn't notice the shift in the cabin's energy. Victoria Ashford emerged from the forward galley like a queen surveying her domain. She was 42, tall and striking, with platinum blonde hair, styled in an elegant chignon that must have taken an hour to perfect. Her uniform was standard issue, but she'd had it tailored to emphasize every curve, fitted jacket pencil skirt that ended just above the knee heels that added 3 inches to her already impressive height. Her makeup was flawless, her lips painted a bold red that matched the Skyward Airlines logo. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from knowing she turned heads everywhere she went. Victoria did a quick scan of the cabin, mentally checking off passengers. Her eyes landed on Naomi in 3A, and something flickered across her face. Confusion, perhaps, or doubt. She walked to the galley and leaned close to Sophia, who was preparing a tray of pre-departure beverages. Did someone upgrade? Victoria's voice was low, but Naomi heard every word. That seat wasn't supposed to be occupied. Sophia glanced at her tablet. No, she's confirmed first class. Naomi Fletcher. Seat 3A. Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows drew together. Check the booking again. Sophia tapped her screen, then looked up. It's valid. Last-minute purchase, but it cleared. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. She straightened up, smoothed her skirt, and walked down the aisle with deliberate slowness. She stopped beside row 3 and looked down at Naomi. Naomi felt the presence before she looked up. She saved her document, then raised her eyes to meet Victoria's gaze. Can I help you? Naomi's tone was pleasant but neutral. I need to verify your boarding pass. Victoria extended her hand, palm up, fingers perfectly manicured with French tips. Naomi unlocked her phone and handed it over without a word. Victoria studied the screen far longer than necessary. Her eyes traced every line of text, looking for something, anything that would justify the unease she felt. A black woman in casual clothes sitting in first class. It didn't fit her mental image of who belonged in these seats. This shows a last-minute purchase. Victoria's voice had an edge to it now. Did you use a corporate credit card? Yes, my company's card. And you have authorization to use company funds for personal travel. Victoria's tone suggested she already knew the answer and didn't believe it. This is business travel. Naomi held out her hand for her phone. Is there a problem? Victoria didn't return the phone immediately. I'll need to see identification that matches the cardholder's name. In seat 2C across the aisle and 1 row forward, a woman looked up from her laptop. She was Asian American, late 30s, with sharp eyes behind stylish glasses and the unmistakable bearing of someone who spent a lot of time in courtrooms. Her name was Rachel Kim, and she was a civil rights attorney. Rachel watched the interaction with growing attention. Naomi reached into her bag, pulled out her wallet, and extracted her driver's license. She handed it to Victoria. Victoria examined the ID as if it might be counterfeit. Fletcher Ventures, she read aloud, noting the business name on Naomi's credit card. Do you have documentation proving you're authorized to use this card? In seat 4B, a black man in his late 20s pulled out his phone. His name was Brandon Hayes, a freelance journalist, and his instincts were screaming that something newsworthy was happening. He opened his camera app and started recording, keeping the phone low and discreet. Across the aisle from Naomi, in seat 3C, a white businessman named James Sullivan lowered his newspaper. He was in his 50s, silver-haired, expensively dressed. "Is there a problem?" he asked. Victoria turned to him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sir, this doesn't concern you. I'm just wondering why you're questioning her." James gestured toward Naomi. "I didn't get asked for additional ID when I boarded. We have protocols for flagged transactions." "Flagged by whom?" Naomi's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now. The transaction cleared. "I'm in my assigned seat. What specifically are you verifying?" Victoria's grip on the phone tightened. "I'm going to need to contact my supervisor before we proceed." Sophia stepped forward, her voice tentative. "Victoria, the system shows she's cleared for this seat. Her ticket is valid." Victoria spun toward her. "I didn't ask for your input, Sophia. Go check on the other passengers." Sophia's face flushed, but she retreated to the galley. "Ma'am," Naomi said, her tone still even. "I've provided my boarding pass, my identification, and my credit card information." "What specifically needs verification?" Victoria pulled a phone from her pocket. Her personal cell, not the crew phone. She turned slightly away and made a call. "Yes, this is Victoria Ashford, lead attendant on Flight 1847. I need to speak with Captain Bennett." "No, I'll hold." The cabin had gone quiet. Every passenger in first class was now watching. In row 1, an elderly white couple whispered to each other. The woman nodded toward Naomi and said something to her husband that made him frown in agreement. Rachel Kim opened her own phone and started taking notes. She'd seen this too many times to ignore it now. Brandon kept his phone camera trained on Victoria, making sure to capture her face, her body language, the way she held herself, like she had every right to interrogate a paying passenger. After a moment, Victoria spoke into the phone again. "Yes, Captain Bennett. I have a passenger in 3A with a potentially fraudulent booking. Yes, last-minute purchase. Corporate card. She's being uncooperative. No, she won't voluntarily move to coach. I think we need you to handle this personally." She hung up and turned back to Naomi with a look of grim satisfaction. "The captain will be out momentarily to speak with you." Naomi closed her laptop slowly. She slid it into her bag. Then she folded her hands in her lap and waited. From the galley, Sophia watched with visible distress. She caught Naomi's eye and mouthed the word, "sorry." Naomi gave her the smallest nod. "It's okay." But it wasn't okay, and everyone in that cabin knew it. The cockpit door opened with a hydraulic hiss. Captain Tyler Bennett emerged, ducking slightly under the low doorframe. He was 45, with the kind of square-jawed confidence that came from years of being obeyed without question. His uniform was crisp, his silver wings pinned perfectly to his chest, his captain's hat tucked under one arm. He walked into the first-class cabin with the bearing of a man who owned the space. In his mind, he did. "Victoria, what's the situation?" His voice carried authority, the kind that expected immediate deference. Victoria gestured toward Naomi. "This passenger is in 3A with what appears to be an unauthorized booking. She purchased a last-minute first-class ticket with a corporate card, and she's refusing to provide adequate verification." Tyler turned to look at Naomi. His eyes swept over her, the casual clothes, the worn bag, the calm expression. He made a decision in 3 seconds. "Ma'am," he said, and his tone was the kind you'd use with a child who needed firm guidance. "We've had some issues with fraudulent bookings lately. I'm going to need you to gather your things and move to coach while we verify your ticket." Naomi didn't move. She looked up at him, her expression unchanged. "I've provided my boarding pass, my identification, and my credit card. What specifically needs verification?" Tyler's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I'm the captain of this aircraft. I have authority over who flies on this plane and where they sit. If I determine that there's a question about your booking, you need to comply with my instructions." "Rachel." Kim closed her laptop with an audible snap. She stood up, pulling her phone from her purse. "Excuse me, Captain. I'm Rachel Kim, attorney at law. What regulation are you citing that allows you to move a passenger with a valid ticket?" Tyler turned to her, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, please sit down and don't interfere with crew operations. I'm not interfering. I'm asking what legal basis you have for this action." She held up her phone. "And I'm documenting this interaction in case it becomes relevant to a civil rights complaint." In his seat, Brandon adjusted his phone's angle to capture both Tyler and Victoria in frame. His live stream counter showed 47 people watching. The number was climbing. Tyler's face flushed red. "Ladies and gentlemen, if everyone would please take their seats so we can resolve this quickly and depart on time." James Sullivan stood up now too. "Captain, I've flown first class on this airline dozens of times. I've never once been asked to verify my booking." "Why is she being singled out?" "Sir, this doesn't concern. It concerns all of us." James interrupted. "Because if you're removing passengers based on your personal comfort level rather than actual violations, then none of us are safe from that kind of treatment." Victoria stepped between Tyler and James. "Sir, please sit down or you'll be asked to deplane as well." On what grounds? James pulled out his phone too. "I'm recording this. I'm a witness, and I'm documenting discrimination." Tyler held up both hands, trying to regain control. "Everyone, please. We're trying to resolve a ticketing issue. If this passenger can provide additional documentation, I've provided everything required by law," Naomi said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the rising noise like a knife. "I showed my boarding pass. I showed my identification. I showed my credit card. Your staff verified all of it. Now you're asking for something more, something you didn't ask from any other passenger in this cabin." She gestured around the space. "The elderly couple in row 1 booked last minute. I saw their boarding passes scan at the same time as mine. Did you ask them for additional verification?" Tyler's mouth opened, but no sound came out. "The businessman in 2B has a company laptop bag," Naomi continued. "Did you verify that he's authorized to use company equipment for personal travel? Ma'am, that's different." How Naomi stood up now, facing him directly. "How is it different? Explain to me in front of all these witnesses what makes my ticket more suspicious than anyone else's." Tyler glanced at Victoria, who looked suddenly uncertain. He turned back to Naomi. "Ma'am, if you don't comply with crew instructions, I have the authority to have you removed from this aircraft entirely." The cabin went dead silent. Naomi held his gaze. "If you remove me from this flight, you're making a decision you will not be able to undo. I'm asking you one more time. Check your passenger manifest carefully. Check the booking notes. There's information there that you need to see." "I don't need to check anything." Tyler's voice rose. "I need you to comply with my instructions. Now gather your things and move to coach, or I'll call airport security." Brandon's phone counter now showed 300 viewers. Comments were flooding in. "This is insane. She hasn't done anything wrong. This is straight-up profiling. Get her lawyer's number ready." Rachel stepped into the aisle. "Captain Bennett, I'm formally stating for the record that this passenger has shown no aggression, made no threats, and violated no regulations. She has complied with every legitimate request. If you proceed with removing her, I will testify in any legal proceeding that this was discriminatory action. Ma'am, sit down now, or I'll have you removed as well. Then you'll remove 2 people for no legal reason." Rachel crossed her arms. I'm not sitting down until you explain what regulation this passenger has violated. Sophia emerged from the galley, her hands clasped together nervously. Captain Bennett, I really think we should just... Sophia, Victoria snapped. Get back to your station. This doesn't concern you, but her ticket is valid. Sophia's voice shook, but she didn't back down. I checked it 3 times. She's cleared for this seat. I said get back to your station. Tyler pulled out his radio. This is Captain Bennett. I need airport security to gate 28 immediately. We have multiple passengers refusing crew instructions. He clipped the radio back to his belt and turned to Naomi. Last chance, ma'am. Move to coach voluntarily or you'll be escorted off this aircraft. Naomi sat back down. She opened her phone, scrolled through her contacts, and pressed a number. She held the phone to her ear. The cabin was silent except for the ringtone. After 3 rings, someone answered. Naomi's voice was calm, almost casual. Michael, it's Naomi. I'm at SFO Gate 28, Flight 1847 to JFK. We have a situation. Pause. No, I'm fine. But I need you to contact Skyward Operations immediately. Have them check the manifest for this flight. My reservation specifically. Pause. Yes, the board meeting is tomorrow. That's why this is urgent. I need corporate on the line within 5 minutes. She hung up and placed the phone face down on her armrest. Tyler stared at her. Who was that Naomi didn't answer? She just looked out the window at the planes taxiing on the tarmac. Victoria leaned close to Tyler. She's bluffing. Probably calling a lawyer. We'll see, Tyler muttered. 3 minutes passed in tense silence. Passengers shifted in their seats. Brandon's live stream had hit 1,000 viewers. Rachel typed notes furiously on her phone. James kept his camera trained on Tyler and Victoria. Then Derek Morrison's voice came over the gate. PA system audible even inside the aircraft. Captain Bennett, please contact gate operations. Captain Bennett to gate operations immediately. Tyler pulled out his radio. This is Bennett. The response came through garbled by static but clear enough. Sir, you need to return to the gate. Corporate is on the line. They want to speak with you about passenger Fletcher. Tyler's face went pale. He looked at Naomi. She looked back at him with an expression that gave nothing away. Stay here, Tyler ordered Victoria. Don't let anyone off this plane. He turned and walked quickly back toward the cockpit, his radio pressed to his ear. Victoria stood in the aisle, her confidence visibly shaken. She smoothed her skirt, adjusted her jacket, tried to look like she was still in control, but her hands were trembling. Sophia appeared beside Naomi's seat. Ma'am, she whispered, can I get you anything? Just water. Thank you, Sophia. Sophia nodded and hurried to the galley. She returned with a bottle of water, her hands steady but her eyes worried. Thank you, Naomi said. And Sophia, I heard you, back there. I heard you standing up for me. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. I should have done more. You did enough. Naomi's voice was gentle. You did what you could in a bad situation. That matters. From the cockpit area came raised voices, Tyler arguing with someone on the phone. The words weren't clear, but the tone was unmistakable. Panic. Brandon's phone pinged with a notification. His live stream had been shared 1,700 times. The comments section was exploding. Rachel leaned across the aisle. I don't know who you called, but it's working. They're scared. Naomi took a sip of water. They should be. The aircraft door opened again and 2 airport security officers climbed aboard. The first was Marcus Thompson, African-American 40s with the solid build of someone who'd spent time in the military. His uniform was crisp, his expression neutral but alert. Behind him came Jennifer Costa White, early 30s, newer to the job following Marcus's lead. Marcus surveyed the cabin, taking in the scene, passengers standing in the aisles, phones out, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. "Who called for security?" Marcus asked. Tyler emerged from the cockpit area. "I did. We have a passenger refusing to comply with crew instructions." Marcus looked past Tyler to Naomi, still seated calmly in 3A. "Ma'am, can you tell me what's happening?" Naomi set down her water bottle. I boarded with a valid ticket, showed my identification at the gate, and again to the flight attendant and took my assigned seat. The lead flight attendant demanded additional verification that she didn't require from other passengers. When I questioned why I was being singled out, the captain threatened to have me removed. Marcus pulled out a notepad. "Have you violated any safety regulations? No. Have you threatened anyone or displayed aggressive behavior? No. Has she?" Marcus turned to Tyler and Victoria. Victoria stepped forward. "She's being non-compliant." Marcus's pen hovered over his notepad. "Non-compliant how, specifically?" "She refused to move to coach when instructed." "Was she sitting in someone else's seat?" "No, but was her ticket fraudulent?" "We haven't confirmed that it's legitimate," Victoria insisted. Marcus turned to Jennifer. "Costa, radio the gate agent. Get the booking confirmation for this passenger." Jennifer pulled out her radio. "Gate 28, this is Security Officer Costa. Need booking confirmation for passenger." She glanced at Naomi. "Last name Fletcher, seat 3A. "Static then." Derek Morrison's voice came through. "Stand by." While they waited, Marcus addressed Tyler. "Captain, has this passenger refused a direct safety instruction? Seatbelt compliance, stowing luggage, anything that falls under FAA regulations." Tyler shifted his weight. "She's being disruptive. How has she disrupted the flight? She's refusing to cooperate. But what specific action has she refused that you're legally authorized to require?" Marcus's tone was professional, but there was an edge to it now. Before Tyler could answer, Jennifer's radio crackled to life. "Gate 28 to security. Booking shows valid first-class ticket purchased yesterday at 5:47 p.m. Cleared payment on corporate American Express card registered to Fletcher Ventures. Boarding pass scanned green at 9:42 a.m. this morning. No flags in the system." Marcus looked at Tyler. "Her ticket is valid. That doesn't mean it means she has every right to be in that seat." Marcus turned to Naomi. "Ma'am, have you received your checked baggage claim?" "I didn't check any bags. Just this." Naomi gestured to her tote. Marcus made a note. "And you boarded through the normal process. Showed your boarding pass at the gate." "Rachel." Kim spoke up from her seat. "Officer, I'm an attorney. I witnessed the entire interaction. This passenger was delayed at the gate by the agent who questioned her ticket even after it scanned green. She was then stopped at the aircraft door and asked for additional ID that no other passenger was required to show. When she provided it, she was questioned about her authorization to use a corporate card. The captain then demanded she move to coach without any legitimate justification." Marcus wrote quickly. "Name please Rachel Kim. I'm happy to provide a formal statement. So are several other passengers who witnessed this." She gestured around the cabin. Brandon raised his hand. "Brandon Hayes. I've been live streaming this whole thing." "Got about 1,500 people watching right now." Marcus looked at Brandon's phone, then at Tyler. "Captain, you're on live stream." You understand that Tyler's face went red. "That doesn't change the fact that I have authority over—" "This isn't about authority." Marcus closed his notepad. "This is about whether you have legal grounds to remove a passenger. From what I'm hearing, you don't." James Sullivan stood. "Officer Thompson, I'm James Sullivan. I'm seated in 3C directly across from Ms. Fletcher." I watched the entire interaction. The flight attendant profiled her. "There's no other explanation." The captain backed that profiling. "I'm willing to testify to that under oath." Marcus sighed heavily. He'd been doing this job for 12 years. He'd seen situations like this before, and they never ended well. "Captain Bennett." I'm recommending that you allow this passenger to remain in her assigned seat and proceed with your departure. Recommended but not required, Tyler shot back. I'm still the captain. I still have final authority over my aircraft. Victoria moved to Tyler's side. Officer, we have protocols for suspicious transactions. This passenger meets multiple red flags. Ma'am Marcus interrupted. What are those red flags? Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. Last-minute booking, corporate card, unusual travel pattern. Half the people in this cabin probably match that description. Marcus gestured around. Did you question all of them? Victoria's silence was answer enough. Jennifer stepped forward. Marcus, maybe we should... Marcus held up a hand. He looked at Naomi. Ma'am, I apologize for this situation. You have every right to be on this flight in your assigned seat. He turned to Tyler and Victoria. If you proceed with trying to remove her, you're doing so against security's recommendation and potentially in violation of her civil rights. Tyler's jaw worked. He looked at Victoria, who looked back at him with desperate eyes. Then Derek Morrison burst through the aircraft door, breathing hard. Captain Bennett. I just got off the phone with corporate. They need you to... He stopped seeing the security officers. Tyler grabbed Derek's arm. What did corporate say? They want you to call the operations center immediately. Derek looked at Naomi, then back at Tyler. Sir, I think there's been a misunderstanding about who Tyler pulled out his radio. Operations, this is Captain Bennett. A woman's voice came through professional but urgent. Captain Bennett, this is Amanda Rivera, Senior VP of Operations. Do not remove passenger Fletcher from that aircraft. Do you understand me? Do not remove her. Tyler stared at the radio. Ma'am, we have a situation with a questionable booking. Her booking is not questionable. Amanda's voice was steel. She is cleared for that flight. She is cleared for that seat. You will proceed with your departure immediately, and you will not question her again. Is that clear? Tyler looked at Naomi. Who is she? That's not your concern right now. Amanda's voice came through again. Captain, I'm going to ask you one more time. Is that clear? Tyler swallowed hard. Yes, ma'am. Clear. Good. I'll be speaking with you when you land in New York. The radio went silent. Marcus crossed his arms. Captain Tyler's face was ashen. She can stay. Victoria grabbed his arm. But we need to verify she can stay. Tyler pulled away from her. His voice cracked. Everyone sit down. We're departing. He turned and walked back to the cockpit like a man in a daze. Victoria stood frozen in the aisle. Marcus nodded to Jennifer. We're done here. He looked at Naomi. Ma'am, I apologize again for the inconvenience. Naomi nodded graciously. Thank you, Officer Thompson. You handled this professionally. Marcus and Jennifer left the aircraft. The cabin was silent. Slowly, passengers began to sit back down, but phones stayed out. Brandon's live stream was still running. Rachel's notes app was still open. Victoria turned to face Naomi. Ma'am, I don't. Naomi's voice was quiet but firm. Don't apologize now. Don't try to fix this now. Just do your job and leave me alone. Victoria's lips trembled. She nodded and retreated to the galley. Sophia approached tentatively. Ma'am, can I get you anything else? I'm fine, Sophia. Thank you. The aircraft door closed with a heavy thud. The jetway pulled back. The cabin crew began their safety demonstration, their voices shaking slightly. As the plane began to taxi, Naomi looked out the window at the terminal receding behind them. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. Still on the flight. Incident documented. Multiple witnesses. Recommend immediate investigation. See you at the board meeting tomorrow. She hit send and closed her eyes. The plane lifted off into the California sky. But this wasn't over, not even close. As the plane climbed through 10,000 feet and the seatbelt sign dinged off, Naomi leaned her head against the cool window and let her mind drift backward. She'd been here before, not on this plane, but in this feeling. The weight of being doubted simply for existing in a space someone else didn't think you belonged. She was 23 again. The office had been in downtown Atlanta, 19th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Naomi had worn her best suit, navy blue, perfectly tailored, paired with a cream blouse and simple pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother. Her resume was printed on expensive paper tucked in a leather portfolio that was a graduation gift from her father. She'd just finished her MBA at Harvard. Full ride plus a stipend. She'd graduated in the top 5% of her class. She'd spent that summer interning at a Fortune 500 consulting firm, where she'd been praised by partners for her strategic thinking. The airline industry had always fascinated her. The logistics, the customer experience, the intersection of technology and human service. She wanted to be part of making it better. The man interviewing her was white, probably 50, with silver hair and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He'd flipped through her resume with the kind of careful attention that suggested he was looking for something wrong rather than something right. "These credentials are impressive." He'd looked up at her. "Did you have help with your applications? A mentor, maybe?" Naomi had kept her expression neutral. "I wrote them myself." "I see here you attended Harvard. Scholarship student, partial scholarship, yes. I also worked 3 jobs to cover my living expenses." The man had leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "Look, I'm going to be honest with you. The airline industry is very traditional. There are certain expectations about who succeeds here. You might find better opportunities in other sectors." Naomi had felt the blood drain from her face. "Other sectors? Like what?" He'd waved a hand vaguely. Non-profit, work education, community outreach, places where you'd be more comfortable, where you'd fit in. She'd stared at him for a long moment, watching him shift under her gaze. Then she'd stood, gathered her portfolio, and walked to the door. Before leaving, she'd turned back. "With respect, sir, the only thing I need to fit into is my own potential. Thank you for your time." She'd walked out of that building and sat in her car in the parking garage for an hour, crying so hard she couldn't see straight. Then she'd called her grandmother. "Baby, what's wrong?" Her grandmother's voice had been warm molasses, sweet and comforting. Naomi had explained the interview through hitching breaths. Her grandmother had been quiet for a long moment. Then she'd said something Naomi never forgot. "Sweetheart, they're going to underestimate you your whole life. Every room you walk into, someone will look at you and decide you don't belong before you even open your mouth. So here's what you do. You let them underestimate you. Let them think you're smaller than you are. Let them think they have power over you." Her grandmother had paused, and Naomi could picture her sitting in her favorite chair, the one by the window where the afternoon light made her face glow. "Then, when it matters most, you show them exactly who you are. You take all that doubt they put on you, and you turn it into fuel. You build something so big they can't ignore it. And when they finally see you, really see you, it'll be too late for them to stop you." Naomi had wiped her eyes. "What if I can't? What if they're right? Baby, the only person who needs to believe in you is you. Everyone else will catch up eventually. Or they won't. Either way, you keep moving." Naomi had hung up the phone and made a decision. If the airline industry wouldn't let her in the front door, she'd build her own door. She'd pivoted to venture capital, spent 2 years at a small firm learning how money moved and who controlled it. Then she'd gone out on her own, starting Fletcher Ventures with money she'd saved and a small investment from her grandmother. For 15 years, she'd built that firm into a powerhouse. She specialized in transportation investments, Airlines, rideshare companies, logistics operations. She found companies that were struggling and helped them become profitable. She found startups that had potential and gave them the capital to soar. 5 years ago, she'd made her first major investment in Skyward Airlines. They'd been hemorrhaging money, facing potential bankruptcy. She'd offered a deal $200 million for a 40% stake and a seat on the board of directors. They'd accepted. Now she owned nearly half of the airline that had just tried to throw her off a plane for looking like she didn't belong. Her grandmother had died 2 years ago, but her voice still echoed in Naomi's mind. Let them underestimate you, then show them who you really are. Naomi opened her eyes and looked around the first-class cabin. Victoria was in the galley, avoiding eye contact. Tyler was locked in the cockpit. Derek was back at the gate, probably sweating through his uniform. Tomorrow in New York, at the board meeting, she would show all of them exactly who she was. And by then, it would be far too late for them to undo what they'd done. The flight was smooth and uneventful for the next 5 hours. Victoria stayed in the galley, emerging only when absolutely necessary. Sophia handled most of the first-class service, bringing meals and drinks with quiet efficiency. Passengers spoke in hushed voices, still processing what they'd witnessed. Brandon kept his phone out but stopped live streaming after the first hour. He'd recorded everything, though. Every moment was backed up to 3 different cloud services. His footage had been shared over 10,000 times. #Justice4. Naomi was starting to trend. Rachel Kim had sent a detailed account to her firm's litigation department. They were already drafting a formal complaint to file with the Department of Transportation. James Sullivan had written an email to the Skyward Airlines customer service department, though he had a feeling it wouldn't make it past the inbox before corporate heard about this directly. Naomi worked. She reviewed her presentation for tomorrow's board meeting, made notes on her proposal, sent emails to her team. She projected calm control, but her mind was racing with strategy. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about every person who'd been profiled, questioned, humiliated for daring to take up space they'd earned. When the plane began its descent into JFK, Naomi powered down her laptop and stared out the window at New York, sprawling below a concrete jungle lit up against the twilight sky. The landing was smooth. The plane taxied to the gate. As soon as the seatbelt sign dinged off, passengers stood and began pulling bags from overhead compartments. Naomi took her time. She gathered her tote, double-checked that she had her phone and wallet, and waited for the aisle to clear. Sophia approached one last time. Ms. Fletcher, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I should have done more. Naomi touched her arm gently. Sophia, you tried. You spoke up when you could. Sometimes that's all we can do in the moment. What matters is what you do next. Sophia nodded, tears in her eyes. I won't forget this. I promise. The aircraft door opened. Passengers filed out into the jet bridge. Naomi joined the line, moving slowly up the aisle. As she passed the galley, Victoria stood rigid, staring straight ahead. Their eyes met for just a moment. Victoria's face was pale, her perfectly applied makeup unable to hide the fear underneath. Naomi said nothing. She just walked past. In the jet bridge, the air was stale and warm. Naomi pulled out her phone as she walked. She had 43 missed calls and over 200 text messages. Her executive assistant, Michael Chen, had called 16 times alone. She texted him quickly. Landed safely. Heading to hotel. Brief me in the morning. His response came instantly. Thank God. You have no idea what's happening here. Naomi did have an idea. She'd just experienced the catalyst firsthand. She emerged from the jet bridge into Terminal 4 at JFK. The gate area was crowded with passengers waiting for the next departure. Naomi blended into the crowd, walking quickly toward baggage claim, even though she had no checked bags. Behind her, she heard raised voices. Where did she go? I don't know. I lost her in the crowd. We need to find her before. Naomi smiled to herself and kept walking. She took the air train to the rental car facility, picked up her reserved sedan, and drove into Manhattan. Her hotel was in Midtown, walking distance from the Skyward Airlines headquarters where tomorrow's board meeting would take place. She checked in under her usual reservation, went up to her room, and finally allowed herself to exhale. Then she opened her laptop and started reviewing the documentation she'd need for tomorrow. The next morning, Naomi woke at 6 a.m. She went for a run through Central Park, showered, dressed in a charcoal gray pantsuit that cost more than some people's monthly rent, and reviewed her presentation one final time. At 9:30 a.m., she walked into the Skyward Airlines headquarters building. The lobby was all glass and steel soaring ceilings, with the company logo emblazoned on the wall in letters 6 feet tall. The receptionist smiled warmly. "Good morning. How can I help you, Naomi Fletcher?" "I'm here for the board meeting." The receptionist typed on her computer, then looked up with surprise. "Oh, Ms. Fletcher." "Yes, of course. 15th floor conference room A. They're expecting you." Naomi took the elevator up. The doors opened onto a plush hallway, thick carpet, modern art on the walls. She could hear voices coming from the conference room at the end of the hall. She walked toward them. Through the glass walls of the conference room, she could see the assembled board members. 9 people total seated around a massive table. At the head sat Helen Cartwright, the CEO, white 55, sharp-eyed and sharp-dressed. Next to Helen sat Amanda Rivera, the senior VP of operations, who'd intervened on the plane. Amanda saw Naomi approaching and stood quickly, coming to meet her at the door. "Naomi." Amanda's face was drawn with stress. "I cannot tell you how sorry we are about yesterday. This is unconscionable. We'll discuss it." Naomi's tone was professional but cool. "Is everyone here?" "Everyone except—" Amanda trailed off. Naomi pushed open the conference room door and stepped inside. All conversation stopped. 9 pairs of eyes turned to her. "Good morning," Naomi said pleasantly. She set her bag down and pulled out her laptop. "Sorry I'm a few minutes late. My flight yesterday was eventful." Helen Cartwright stood. "Naomi, we need to talk about what happened." "We will. But first, let's handle the regular business. I have a proposal to present regarding route expansion. That's why I flew out here." Helen started. The door burst open. Victoria Ashford stood there, still in her uniform from yesterday's flight, mascara smudged under her eyes. Behind her was Derek Morrison, looking equally disheveled. And behind them both was Tyler Bennett, his captain's uniform wrinkled. "Ms. Cartwright." Victoria's voice was desperate. "Please, I need to speak with you. There's been a terrible misunderstanding." Helen's face went hard. "What are you doing here? You were told to stay home pending investigation. I need to explain." Victoria pushed past Amanda and into the room. She stopped when she saw Naomi. She pointed an accusatory finger. "You set me up. You got on that plane looking like that on purpose, trying to trap me, looking like what?" Naomi asked quietly. Victoria's mouth worked, but no words came out. "Looking like what?" Naomi repeated. "Say it. Tell everyone in this room what you thought when you saw me yesterday." Victoria's face crumpled. I didn't know who you were." "You didn't need to know who I was. I was a paying customer in my assigned seat." Naomi stood facing her directly. "But you couldn't see that. All you could see was a black woman in casual clothes, and you decided I must have stolen my ticket, must have used a fraudulent credit card, must have been running some kind of scam. That's not." Victoria started. "Yes, it is." Naomi's voice was steel now. "And you know how I know, because you didn't question anyone else on that plane. Not the elderly couple who also booked last minute. Not the businessman with the company laptop. Not a single white passenger in that cabin. Just me." Helen had come around the table now. "Ms. Ashford, Mr. Morrison, Captain Bennett, you need to leave immediately. You're suspended pending investigation. This is wildly inappropriate. Derek stepped forward. Please, Ms. Cartwright. I just did what I thought was protocol. I didn't mean to. You flagged a VIP reservation without checking the notes. Amanda's voice was sharp. You delayed boarding. You enabled what happened on that aircraft. Tyler moved toward the table. I was trying to maintain safety and security. That's my job as captain. Your job, Naomi said, is to fly the plane safely, not to remove passengers because they make you uncomfortable. She turned to the assembled board members. Let me show you all something. She opened her laptop and pulled up a file. This is footage from yesterday's flight, courtesy of passenger Brandon Hayes, who live-streamed the incident. She turned the laptop around. The board members leaned forward. The video played. Victoria demanding Naomi's ID. Tyler threatening removal. The security officers intervening. Amanda's voice over the radio. When it finished, the room was silent. Helen spoke first. This is appalling. It gets worse. Naomi pulled up another file. After the incident, I had my team pull passenger removal data for the last 3 years. Victoria, you've initiated the removal of 47 passengers. 42 of them were people of color. Derek, you've flagged over 200 transactions as suspicious. 90% involved Black or Latino passengers. Tyler, your removal authorizations follow the same pattern. She let that sink in. This isn't about one bad day. This is about a pattern of discrimination that's been allowed to continue unchecked because no one with power was paying attention. Helen's hands were shaking. She turned to Victoria, Derek, and Tyler. You're terminated, all 3 of you. Security will escort you out. Victoria's face went white. You can't. I have a family. I have bills. You should have thought of that before you profiled a passenger. Helen picked up the phone on the conference table. Security to conference room A immediately. Please. Victoria turned to Naomi. Please, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Naomi looked at her for a long moment. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry the person you targeted had power to fight back. But you're not sorry for all the people you've done this to over the years who couldn't fight back, who just had to accept being humiliated and removed from flights they paid for. Victoria broke down sobbing. Security arrived and escorted all 3 of them out. When the door closed, Helen sat down heavily. Naomi, I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet. Naomi pulled out a document. I have requirements. Requirements. One of the board members spoke up, an older white man named Charles. Naomi will compensate you for yesterday's experience. I don't want compensation. I want change. Naomi laid out the document. First, full civil rights audit of your crew. Every passenger removal in the last 5 years reviewed for bias. Second, mandatory bias training for every employee. Not optional. Not online modules they can click through. Real in-person training. Third, passenger bill of rights displayed at every gate. Fourth, body cameras for all crew members. Fifth, independent oversight committee with representatives from civil rights organizations. She looked around the table. And sixth, I want a public statement from this company acknowledging what happened, apologizing not just to me but to every passenger who's experienced this treatment and committing to measurable change. Helen was taking notes. You'll have it. All of it. And one more thing. Naomi's voice was quiet now. I want Sophia Martinez, the flight attendant who tried to stand up to Victoria, promoted immediately. She showed integrity under pressure. That should be rewarded, not punished. Helen nodded. Done. Naomi closed her laptop. Now, let's discuss my route expansion proposal. The board meeting continued for another 2 hours. Naomi presented her proposal for expanding Skyward's routes into underserved communities, smaller cities that lacked direct flight access to major hubs. Her data was thorough, her arguments compelling. By the time she finished, the board had voted unanimously to approve a $150 million expansion. When the meeting adjourned, Naomi packed up her materials. Board members approached her one by one, offering apologies and assurances of change. Helen Cartwright waited until the room had emptied, then sat down across from Naomi. "I've been CEO for 3 years." Helen's voice was tired. "I thought we had good people. I thought our training was adequate. I was wrong." Naomi looked at her. "You weren't wrong. You were inattentive. There's a difference." "Fair enough." Helen folded her hands. "What happened to you yesterday? Did it surprise you?" "Not even a little bit. That breaks my heart." "It should. Because I have resources. I have power. I could fight back." How many other people experienced the same thing and just had to accept it because they couldn't afford to fight? Helen was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to make this right. You're going to try." Naomi stood gathering her things. "Whether you succeed depends on whether you treat this as a PR crisis to manage or a cultural problem to solve. If you just want to make the headlines go away, nothing will change. But if you actually commit to examining how bias operates in your systems, you might make a real difference." "I'm committed." Helen stood too. "I give you my word. I'll hold you to it." Naomi extended her hand. Helen shook it. "Thank you. For standing your ground. For making us see what we were missing." Naomi smiled for the first time all day. "You're welcome. Now let's get to work." Meanwhile, Brandon Hayes's video had gone fully viral. By noon, it had been viewed over 2 million times. News outlets had picked up the story. Headlines splashed across websites and television crawls. Venture capital CEO profiled on flight. She partly owns Skyward Airlines. Board member removed from first class. When success isn't enough. Black woman's humiliation goes viral. Think pieces proliferated. Twitter threads dissected every moment of the footage. #flying. While black became a rallying cry, with thousands of people sharing their own stories of being profiled, questioned, and humiliated while trying to travel. Civil rights organizations issued statements calling for industry-wide reform. Other airlines, sensing the potential for similar scandals, proactively announced policy reviews. The Department of Transportation launched a formal investigation into discriminatory practices across the airline industry. Flight attendant unions issued statements supporting bias training and agreeing to participate in reform efforts. In the span of 24 hours, one incident on one flight had sparked a national conversation. 2 weeks later, the full investigation results came back. Victoria Ashford had removed 47 passengers over 3 years with clear evidence of racial bias in her decision-making. She was terminated permanently and flagged in the industry database, effectively ending her career in aviation. Derek Morrison's suspicious transaction flags revealed a pattern so blatant it was presented as a case study in unconscious bias. He was terminated and required to complete bias training before being eligible for employment at any airline. Tyler Bennett lost his pilot's license pending an FAA review that would take months and might result in permanent revocation. 5 other crew members were suspended or terminated for similar patterns of discriminatory behavior. Skyward Airlines faced a class action lawsuit from passengers who'd been wrongfully removed over the past 5 years. Naomi's firm committed $50 million to a legal defense fund for the plaintiffs, but the real change was happening behind the scenes. Helen Cartwright implemented every single requirement Naomi had outlined. Body cameras for crew, passenger bill of rights, independent oversight, mandatory training that was actually meaningful. Other airlines followed suit. Within 6 months, the industry looked different. Not perfect, not fixed completely, but better. Measurably better. 3 months after the incident, Naomi found herself back at San Francisco International Airport. She was flying to Seattle for a venture capital conference, and she deliberately booked the same airline, the same route, the same class of service. She wanted to see if anything had actually changed. She wore similar clothes, comfortable blazer jean sneakers. She wanted to be recognizable if anyone remembered her from the news coverage. At the gate, the agent was different. An Hispanic man named Carlos Rodriguez. He looked up from his computer, and his eyes widened in recognition. Ms. Fletcher. He stood slightly straighter. Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you for flying with us today. He scanned her boarding pass without hesitation, without questions, without a single suspicious glance. Have a wonderful flight, ma'am. Naomi smiled. Thank you, Carlos. She walked down the jet bridge with none of the tension from 3 months ago. No knot in her stomach, no anticipation of confrontation. The aircraft door was open. A different crew stood there, including a new lead flight attendant, an older black woman named Janet Williams. Ms. Fletcher, Janet's smile was genuine and warm. It's an honor to have you flying with us today. Can I get you anything? Just water, please. And please call me Naomi. Janet's eyes crinkled at the corners. Naomi it is. Welcome aboard. Naomi settled into seat 3. The same seat where this had all started. The cabin filled with passengers. She watched the boarding process with careful attention. A young black woman in her early 20s boarded wearing a hoodie and jeans. She looked nervous, clutching her phone tightly as she found her seat in row 2. Janet approached her with the same warm smile. Welcome aboard. Is this your first time flying first class? The young woman nodded. Yeah, I saved up for months for this ticket. Well, you're going to love it. Let me know if you need anything at all. No additional questions, no ID check, no suspicious looks, just kindness. The young woman visibly relaxed. Naomi caught her eye and smiled. The young woman smiled back, a silent acknowledgement between 2 black women occupying space they'd earned without apology. The flight took off smoothly. The service was excellent. Janet and her crew treated every passenger with equal respect and dignity. As the plane leveled off at cruising altitude, Naomi pulled out her laptop. She had proposals to review investments to evaluate work that never stopped. But first, she opened a document she'd been working on for weeks. It was titled Investment Proposal for Equity-Focused Transportation Initiative. The proposal outlined a new division of Fletcher Ventures that would specifically fund businesses led by people of color in the transportation industry. Airlines, rideshare companies, logistics firms, public transit innovations. She was using her platform and resources to open doors that had been closed for too long. Her phone buzzed with a text from Helen Cartwright. Just saw the latest passenger satisfaction numbers, up 23% across all demographics. The changes are working. Thank you for pushing us. Naomi typed back, This is just the beginning. And it was. Because 3 months after Naomi's incident, the ripple effects were still spreading. The Passenger Dignity Act, as it had been nicknamed in the media, was now standard at every skyward gate. Other airlines had adopted similar policies. Flight attendant training programs had been completely overhauled across the industry. A national hotline had been established for passengers to report discrimination incidents staffed by independent advocates not employed by the airlines. Body camera footage was being used to review controversial passenger removals with a public database tracking statistics by airline route and crew member. The DOT investigation had led to formal complaints against 4 major airlines and monetary penalties totaling over $50 million. Most importantly, passengers were speaking up. The viral spread of Brandon's video had empowered thousands of people to document and report their own experiences. The culture was shifting, slowly, painfully, with plenty of setbacks, but it was moving. Sophia Martinez, the flight attendant who'd tried to stand up to Victoria, had been promoted to crew training specialist. She was now designing the new bias education program that every Skyward employee had to complete. She'd reached out to Naomi for input, and they'd met for coffee the previous week. I keep thinking about that day Sophia had said, how scared I was, how I almost didn't say anything. But you did say something. That matters. I want to make sure other people feel empowered to speak up too, that they don't feel alone if they see something wrong. Naomi had smiled. That's exactly the right instinct. Brandon Hayes, the journalist who'd live-streamed the incident, had turned his footage into a documentary about discrimination in air travel. It premiered at Sundance and won the Audience Award for short documentaries. He was now working on a full-length feature. Rachel Kim, the attorney who documented everything, had successfully represented 12 former passengers in the class action lawsuit against Skyward Airlines. The settlement was confidential, but the airline's commitment to change was public and binding. James Sullivan, the businessman who'd spoken up, had become an advocate for bystander intervention training. He'd partnered with several organizations to develop programs teaching people how to safely and effectively support victims of discrimination. The elderly couple from row 1 who'd watched Naomi's humiliation with barely concealed approval had sent her a letter. She'd received it a month after the incident. The handwriting was shaky. Dear Ms. Fletcher, we owe you an apology. We watched what happened on that flight and we said nothing. Worse, we agreed with it in our minds. We thought you were being difficult. We thought the crew was just doing their jobs. We were wrong. We see that now. We've had to look at ourselves and ask hard questions about the assumptions we make about people who don't look like us. We're trying to do better. We're trying to learn. We wanted you to know that you changed our minds and our hearts. Thank you for standing your ground. Thank you for showing us our own bias. With regret and respect, Margaret and Donald Harrison. Naomi had kept the letter. She'd shown it to her assistant Michael as an example of how people could change if they were willing to sit with discomfort. Not everyone did change, of course. There were plenty of people who watched Brandon's video and found ways to blame Naomi for being too sensitive or playing the victim. But enough people did change. Enough people saw the truth. Enough people demanded better. And that made all the difference. As Naomi's flight to Seattle began its descent, she closed her laptop and looked out the window at the city below. She thought about her grandmother, who'd died never seeing the day when Naomi wouldn't be questioned for taking up space she'd earned. She thought about her 23-year-old self sitting in that parking garage in Atlanta crying after being told she didn't belong in the airline industry. She thought about every black woman who'd been told they were too much, or not enough, too loud, or too quiet, too confident, or too passive. The plane touched down smoothly. Passengers applauded a common occurrence now on flights where crew members were recognized for treating everyone with dignity. As Naomi gathered her things, Janet approached one last time. Naomi, can I tell you something? Of course. Janet's voice dropped to a whisper. I've been flying for 23 years. I've been questioned. I've been profiled. I've been told I don't belong in first class more times than I can count. She blinked back tears. What you did 3 months ago, it changed everything for people like me, for passengers and crew members. You stood up when it mattered. Thank you. Naomi touched her arm gently. You would have done the same. I hope I would have. Janet straightened up, wiping her eyes. But now I know I can, because you showed us it's possible. The aircraft door opened. Passengers began filing out. Naomi walked up the jet bridge into the Seattle terminal. The afternoon sun streamed through the massive windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. She pulled out her phone and sent a message to her team. Landed safely. Meeting starts at 4. See you soon. Then she sent one more message, this one to Helen Cartwright. Just flew skyward again. The difference is real. Well done. Helen's response came immediately. Your courage made it possible. Let's keep going. Naomi smiled and pocketed her phone. She walked through the terminal with her head high, her shoulders back, her stride, confident. Around her, thousands of travelers moved through the space, all colors, all backgrounds, all going somewhere, all belonging equally. And for the first time in her life, Naomi walked through an airport without that tiny knot of anticipation in her stomach, without the mental preparation for being questioned, without the emotional armor she'd learned to wear in spaces where she expected to be doubted. She was just a person traveling. Nothing more, nothing less. That was everything. You know what gets me about Naomi's story? It's not just about what happened to her. It's about how many times this happens every day to people who don't have her resources, her platform, her power to fight back. Think about all the passengers who get profiled, questioned, removed from flights, and nobody films it. Nobody speaks up. Nobody cares. They just have to swallow the humiliation and move on with their day. That's what makes Naomi's story so important. She didn't just fight for herself. She fought for everyone who couldn't fight back. I learned a lot from watching how this played out. Let me share some of those lessons with you. First, your dignity is not up for negotiation. Naomi didn't yell. She didn't make a scene. She didn't fight back with anger. She simply refused to accept treatment that was wrong. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is hold your ground calmly and say, "This is not okay." Second, use whatever power you have to lift others up. Naomi could have accepted a private apology, gotten back on the plane, and moved on with her life. Instead, she demanded changes that would protect every passenger who came after her. That's what real leadership looks like, using your privilege and platform to make things better for people who don't have those advantages. Third, documentation matters. Brandon's video changed everything. Rachel's notes became legal evidence. James's testimony supported the investigation. In a world where people can deny and dismiss what happened, having proof makes the difference between being heard and being ignored. Now here's my advice to you. If you witness discrimination, speak up. Be Brandon, be Rachel, be James. You don't have to be the hero. You just have to be willing to say out loud, "This isn't right." Your voice matters more than you think. If you experience discrimination, know that standing your ground is an act of courage. You don't owe anyone an explanation for existing in spaces you've earned access to. And if people underestimate you, remember what Naomi's grandmother said, "Let them underestimate you, then show them exactly who you are when it counts." And if you're in a position of power, check yourself. Ask whether you'd treat everyone the same way. Because bias doesn't announce itself with a warning sign. It shows up in small decisions about who you question and who you trust, who you believe belongs and who you doubt. We all have choices. We can be the person who profiles others. We can be the person who stays silent. Or we can be the person who stands up and demands better. Choose to be the person who makes things better. If this story moved, you hit that like button and subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And the next time you see someone being treated unfairly, remember Naomi's story and ask yourself, what would I do? Thanks for watching. Keep standing up for what's right. Keep believing that dignity is not a privilege, it's a right. And keep fighting for a world where everyone belongs, not because of their power or resources, but simply because they're human.